The city lights of Chicago glittered like 1,000 secrets that never slept. And tonight, one of those secrets had Emma Carter's name written all over it. She stood at her apartment window, staring down at the rain-slicked streets, the hum of taxis echoing below. Her reflection looked tired, 32 years old, brown hair tied loosely, olive skin pale under the flickering glow of a neon sign. Once, she had been a dreamer, a designer with ambition, a woman in love. But that was before the betrayal, before she found out that her business partner and fiancé, Lucas Reed, had stolen her startup idea, her investors, and her heart in a single blow. Now, a year later, Emma was silent fire. A soft ping on her phone broke the quiet. It was a sleek, silver envelope graphic, an invitation. The Reed Innovation Awards, celebrating visionaries who changed the future. Her chest tightened. Lucas was being honored for her project. And the gala? Downtown, at the very venue she had dreamed of launching their company together. She laughed bitterly. So that's how fate wants to play it. She poured herself a glass of red wine, her hands trembling with old rage. She had sworn to move on, but how could she when her name had been erased from her own creation? Her best friend, Maya Torres, called right on cue. "Em, tell me you're not watching the live feed." "I'm not. I just got invited." "By them?" "By him. Probably a guilt stunt. But I think I'll go." "Emma, no, don't start something you can't finish." "Who said I'm starting something?" Emma said, sipping her wine, her eyes cold. "I'm finishing it." Down below, thunder cracked across the skyline. The city held its breath. Revenge wasn't born in fire. It was born in silence. And Emma Carter was very, very quiet tonight. Rain streaked across Emma's apartment window like silver threads as she zipped up her black velvet gown. It hugged her frame elegantly, not for beauty, but for power. Her soft brown hair was swept into a tight bun, her emerald earrings catching the dim light. This wasn't just a dress. It was armor. The cab ride to the downtown Hyatt felt endless. The city glowed beneath neon billboards and traffic lights, its pulse steady, unaware that revenge was already in motion. At the hotel entrance, flash bulbs popped like fireworks. The Reed Innovation Gala was crawling with journalists, investors, and tech elites. Emma's heels clicked sharply on the marble floor as she entered, heads turning. For a moment, even the music seemed to falter. Then came the familiar voice, smooth, arrogant, and cold. "Emma?" She turned. Lucas Reed, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a navy tuxedo that screamed success. But to Emma, he was nothing more than a thief dressed in silk. "Well, I wasn't expecting you," he said with a nervous chuckle. "Guess surprises still make your night," Emma replied coolly. He glanced around. "I thought you left the city." "I did, but I couldn't miss seeing you get an award for something we built together." Lucas's jaw tightened. "You're still holding on to that." "Not anymore." She smiled. "I'm here to let go." Before he could answer, Clara Bennett, his new girlfriend and PR head, blonde hair, crimson dress, the perfect accessory, approached, looping her arm around his. "Emma Carter, the ghost of startups past." Emma tilted her head. "Careful, Clara. Ghosts have a habit of haunting the living." They both smiled, polite daggers hiding behind painted lips. Inside the ballroom, champagne glasses shimmered, violins hummed, and the large LED display on stage read, "Honoring Lucas Reed, Visionary of the Year." Emma took her seat near the front, her eyes burning into the glowing screen. Around her, people whispered admiration. "He's brilliant. He's the future." He built an empire in a year. But Emma knew the truth. The code, the prototype, the designs, all hers. And as the lights dimmed and Lucas walked on stage, she slipped her hand into her clutch, pressing the tiny flash drive inside, her trump card. Tonight, she wasn't here to make a scene. She was here to destroy him quietly, the way he destroyed her. When the host began introducing the award, Emma's lips curled slightly. On that flash drive was the foolproof, time-stamped files, video meetings, and stolen documents. Everything that tied Lucas to her work. And in 15 minutes, every screen in this ballroom would play it live. The orchestra swelled, Lucas smiled for the crowd, and Emma whispered under her breath, "Smile while you can, because when the truth hits, it burns louder than applause." The violins swelled as Lucas stood at the podium, his golden trophy glinting under the chandeliers. His speech started smoothly. A masterclass in arrogance. "I dedicate this award to every dreamer who refused to quit," he said, voice polished, charming, rehearsed. Emma sat in the front row, her hand resting lightly on her lap, thumb pressing the small remote hidden in her clutch. On her phone, a countdown ticked. 0004559. Behind her calm eyes, a storm brewed. Every word Lucas spoke was a lie, layered on betrayal. He had stolen her algorithms, patented her code, erased her name from the company records, and blacklisted her in the industry. Yet here he stood, the hero of innovation. Clara watched him proudly, her diamond bracelet catching the light, unaware of the fire waiting to ignite. 4 minutes, Emma whispered to herself. She glanced around the ballroom. Investors, reporters, city officials, all dazzled by Lucas's charm. A perfect audience for a perfect downfall. When the timer hit 2 minutes, Emma rose quietly and slipped out of her seat. She moved toward the sound booth, her heels silent against the carpet. The technician looked up, startled. "I'm with the event team," she lied smoothly, flashing a badge she'd printed earlier. "Audio feed issue from the stage? Mind if I check the input?" He nodded, distracted by his headset. In seconds, Emma plugged in her drive, uploading her file into the main presentation system. A folder titled Visionary Files opened, and beneath it one more, The Truth. She hit upload. Back on stage, Lucas was wrapping up. "And as I look toward the future, I want to thank everyone who believed in me." The lights dimmed for a slideshow, but instead of his company highlights, the first image appeared. A screenshot of an email dated 2 years ago from Emma Carter to Lucas Reed. Subject, prototype access request. Gasps rippled through the room. Slide after slide followed. Proof of stolen files, meeting recordings, and voice clips. And then the video. Lucas's own voice filled the speakers. "Don't worry, once she's gone, we'll file it under my name. She'll never recover." The ballroom fell silent. Lucas froze, staring at the massive screens, his face pale. "Turn it off!" he barked at the sound crew, but they couldn't. Emma had locked the feed. Emma stepped forward from the side aisle, her voice echoing across the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, you just met your visionary of the year." Camera flashes exploded. Reporters jumped to their feet. Lucas's mask shattered. "You planned this?" he hissed. "I built everything you have. Consider this repossession." The audience erupted in whispers. Clara backed away from Lucas, humiliated. Sponsors began leaving their seats. Security moved in as Lucas shouted, "You'll regret this, Emma." She smiled faintly. "I already did. Now it's your turn." As she walked out, applause erupted, not for Lucas, but for the woman who dared to expose him. Outside, the cold night air felt electric. Emma's heart pounded, but not from fear. For the first time in years, it beat freely, steady, strong, and clean. Her revenge wasn't loud or violent. It was precise, surgical, justice delivered in pixels and proof. And as the news vans arrived and headlines began to form, Emma Carter vanished into the city lights, leaving behind a legacy no thief could ever steal. By the next morning, Emma's name was everywhere. Emma Carter Exposes Reed trended across every platform. News anchors replayed the footage on loop. Analysts debated intellectual property ethics, and talk shows hailed her as the face of digital justice. But behind the headlines, Emma sat alone at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago, her reflection blurry in the glass. Her phone buzzed constantly. Journalists, old co-workers, even former investors who'd ignored her before. Yet, her victory felt heavy. The waitress, a kind woman in her 50s, placed a cappuccino on the table. "You look like you could use a break, sweetheart." Emma smiled faintly. "Yeah, maybe just a quiet day." But quiet didn't last long. A black SUV pulled up outside. 2 men in suits stepped out. One of them, Detective Harris, a sharp-eyed investigator with graying hair. He approached her table. "Miss Carter?" "Yes? I'm afraid you'll have to come with us. Lucas Reed filed charges for data breach, defamation, and unauthorized access. He stole my work." "Ma'am, that's for the court to decide." The cafe went silent as they escorted her out. Cameras flashed again, this time not as applause, but accusation. Hours later, in a gray interrogation room, Emma sat across from Harris. He leaned back, hands folded. "You had solid evidence, Emma. Why not take it to court instead of ambushing him on live TV? Because people like him buy the courtroom," she said bitterly. Truth needed an audience. Harris studied her quietly. Then, without warning, he slid a file across the table. Inside were Lucas's financials, offshore accounts, and anonymous transactions. Funny thing, your little stunt made others come forward. Seems Mr. Reed wasn't just stealing from you. He's been laundering money through shell companies for years. Emma's eyes widened. "You're saying he's going down hard, but we'll need your cooperation." She nodded slowly. "Whatever it takes." That night, she returned home to find her apartment door slightly ajar. Her breath hitched. Inside, drawers were open. Paper scattered. A single note sat on the counter. "You think you've won? Watch your back." Emma's fingers trembled, but she didn't call the police. Instead, she took a deep breath, locked every window, and opened her laptop. If Lucas wanted a war, she'd end it on her terms. Through encrypted channels, she reached out to a cybersecurity friend named Janelle, a brilliant black woman in her late 20s with dreadlocks and a reverent sense of humor. "Girl, you just detonated a billionaire," Janelle said, half impressed, half terrified. "He started it, and you're finishing it." Janelle grinned. "All right. Let's burn his empire from the inside." Together, they began tracing Lucas's offshore trail, hidden accounts, bribes, shell firms. The deeper they went, the uglier it got. By midnight, Emma found what she needed: a transfer record linking Lucas to a politician's campaign fund. Corruption. Proof. But as she hit save, her laptop screen flickered, then went black. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You shouldn't have touched that." Outside, a car engine revved. Headlights flashed through her window. Emma's heart pounded. She ducked, crawling toward the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the counter. Footsteps echoed outside the door. But before anything happened, sirens wailed. The car peeled away. Detective Harris's voice boomed through the hallway. "Emma? Are you okay?" She exhaled shakily, gripping the knife tighter. "Yeah, but I think I just poked the devil," Harris sighed. "Then we'd better make sure he burns before he bites." Outside, the city glimmered under a cold midnight rain, and for the first time, Emma realized revenge had a cost. But justice had a price she was still willing to pay. The city held its breath like an audience waiting for the last act. I felt it in the way taxis slowed at intersections and in the hush outside the courthouse. The ordeal had stretched taut for weeks. News cycles, subpoenas, private investigators, and the thin, sickly taste of adrenaline at 3 a.m. when every email could be a threat. But tonight, everything that mattered would either finish or begin. Detective Harris met me outside the DA's office before I walked in. Rain had polished the skyline into chrome. He was the same steady figure, late 40s, brown skin, a salt and pepper crew cut. His eyes were tired but lit with something like promise. "They'll indict him today," he said. "We've got the offshore links, the campaign transfers, the shell company confirmations. Your live reveal accelerated everything. People wanted to talk instead of stay quiet." I nodded. There was relief, yes, but also a hollow that victory had not filled. Revenge doesn't always arrive like fireworks. Sometimes it is a small, strange ache that lives in your jaw. Inside, the DA's team assembled around the long table. Papers, screen shares, and coffee cups displayed like arms for an army. Janelle sat in the corner with 3 laptops open and a grin that said she both loved this and hated it all at once. She was 29, black, dreadlocked hair pulled back, a leather jacket and a hoodie, part hacker, part guardian angel. She tapped quickly, eyes darting. We've got the precise trail. The transfers hit the politician's account right after the gala deposit, then laundered through 3 shell entities. I flagged timestamps, device fingerprints, and the invoice mismatches. You gave me the key, I turned it. Maya, my oldest friend, was there too, calm and fierce. She'd come with coffee-steady hands and a stack of press-ready statements. She was 31, Latina, sharp in a charcoal suit that made her look like a chess master. We closed the loop today. We accept nothing less. Her voice was a promise. The DA staff prepared the indictment. They read the counts aloud: fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, campaign finance violations, and a dozen state-level offenses that made the room hum with legal weight. Each charge landed heavy on the table and somehow lighter in my chest, because it meant someone who trafficked in lies would have to answer for them. We served the papers before dawn. The team moved like a well-oiled machine. Harris led the arrest. Detectives from 3 jurisdictions coordinated simultaneous warrants. Lucas slept in a penthouse that smelled like new leather and older lies. At 6:15 a.m., the door buzzed. He answered groggy, hair mussed, still in the suit he'd slept in. No dignity, where it had once been polished into arrogance. Harris read his rights. The expression that crossed Lucas's face was not so much as surprise as confusion, like a math equation that refused to compute. He sputtered words, called lawyers, demanded phone calls, but the officers were practiced in waiting. They escorted him in handcuffs down glass-paneled elevators, past the lobby where a doorman snapped pictures on a shaky phone, past the concierge who tried to invent excuses he'd never have believed. The cameras in the lobby captured it all. The city watched, and with each clip, the myth of Lucas Reed unraveled. It took longer than I expected to feel anything definitive. Watching his arrest on a looped newsroom feed didn't grant catharsis. What finally loosened the knot in my chest came later. Small, domestic, and utterly human. My mother called me mid-afternoon, voice sharp with worry, and then soft with the kind of pride that sticks like glue. You did the right thing, Iha. You stood up. Her words were a balm. The DA dropped charges officially in a press conference 2 days later. They read statutes and evidence, their language clinical and immovable. Lucas's assets were frozen, his board expelled him, and the politician whose name appeared in the transfers resigned amid a scandal that spread like oil on water. Sponsors severed ties, donors demanded audits. Repercussions rippled. It was messy and satisfying in equal measure. We negotiated settlements for the vendors and contractors who had been cheated, small businesses and temp workers who had been left dangling by promises. Some money returned, some did not. I sat with each person in cold conference rooms, handed copies of restitution checks, and listened as relief unspilled in their voices. Those moments, repairing what I could, felt more like victory than any headline. But the price had been steep. I'd signed privacy waivers to protect witnesses. I'd relived emails and drafts and recordings a dozen times. I'd lost alone nights to paranoia. The apartment that I had once thought a refuge bore new locks, new cameras, and a security contact in the event someone wanted to send a message. I miss sleep. I miss simpler things. There are costs to tearing a kingdom down. When it was finally over, legally over at least, the city began to rearrange itself around me. People who once ignored my calls now sent polite messages of admiration. Some offered friendship that felt transactional and brittle, but others, Maya, Janelle, Harris, and my mother, stayed. They were the proof that truth does not travel alone, it needs allies. The final touch, a little delicious and perfectly measured, came when the Reed Innovation Awards issued a public apology. They announced the revocation of Lucas's accolade and, in a move that made my chest catch, a private admission that Emma Carter's designs and IP had been foundational to the product that had won acclaim. The statement was cautious, legal, and a tiny, glorious slice of vindication. No amount could reclaim the year he'd stolen, but public credit mattered. Names matter. I sat alone on my balcony that night, the city below a scatter of amber. The air was cool and my hands had finally stopped shaking. I thought of the moment in the ballroom, when the screen switched to praise to truth, and of the fear that followed. I thought of the woman at the cafe who called me sweetheart and made a small courtesy of warmth. I thought of the vendors who'd cried when they saw their checks. I thought of Lucas, a man who believed his own myth until the myth burned. Some people say revenge changes you. The bitter becomes your weather. Maybe that is true, but for me, the final blow did not hollow me. It taught me limits and ferocity, how far I would push and when to stop. I had not become cruel. I had become exact. The next morning, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a small, old leather-bound notebook with no sender. The first page simply read, "Build better. Build with people who keep your name." No signature, no flourish. Just that mandate. I closed the book gently, placed it on the shelf beside the patents I'd finally filed under my name, and turned away. Outside, the city hurried on, unforgiving and bright, capable of swallowing stories whole. Inside, my life, scarred but intact, began again.